Hey everyone, C+D Music Reviews here. I'm C+D and this is going to be a music review of the new Esperanza Spalding album, Emily's D+Evolution. This is the latest full-length album from jazz bass virtuoso singer-songwriter Esperanza Spalding. Now, I've been casually aware of Esperanza Spalding for a little while now, around 2009, 2010 I believe. She beat out Justin Bieber, Mumford & Sons, Florence and the Machine for Best New Artist, which was peculiar. I mean, this was a jazz artist, and all of a sudden she's getting this Best New Artist award. What's up with that? Turns out that she's a jazz fusion artist who is really great at the bass, the jazz bass. I never really got a chance to hop onto a Esperanza Spalding album, saying that jazz fusion, while it's a genre that I do admire, it's not something that I actively seek out. So she has a new album out. It's gotten some attention, so I thought, okay, I'll give this a try. But after I did, I don't see all the buzz about it. This is actually less than unique. Now this album's about 12 tracks in length. It's about 40 minutes or so. You pretty much get an idea of what this album is going to sound like once you get to the track after Good Lava. But before I get into that track, I'll talk about Good Lava first. Now, Good Lava, really interesting track. It starts off kind of soft before it's introduced by this drumming. Then her singing gets really eccentric. The guitars and overall instrumentation gets kind of prog rock-like, kind of grungish in a way. That really intrigued me in first listen because I realized that this is not going to be a jazz album. This is going to be a rock album, some kind of neo-soul-ish album. And once it gets to the second track, Unconditional Love, the Joni Mitchell influence that haunts this entire album sets in. What you're pretty much getting is a sound that it's like if Erykah Badu time traveled back to the 1970s, the early to mid 1970s, and learned the lyrical and vocal nuances of Joni Mitchell, then traveled back to the 90s to give us something like this. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't mind artists wearing their influences on their sleeve. It's just that once they embrace their influences so much that I'm not even listening to a specific artist that's being labeled and billed for this album, that's when it becomes a problem. And it really starts becoming a problem around Judas. I like the bass part that comes up. It's a little Beefheart-ish, but it just feels way too long for its own good. It's only 4 minutes, but it feels like it's so much longer. There's just too much of a Court and Spark vibe on this track and the track after it, Earth to Heaven. It does pick up on the track 1. I love the vocal melody on this track. The kind of start-stop instrumentation that comes in. It's lively. It's really eccentric. I enjoy it quite a bit. And it's probably my favorite track on this entire album. And then there's Rest in Pleasure, which I guess takes this play on words with R.I.P. instead of Rest in Peace. It's Rest in Pleasure. It's got this either prog rock or post-rock intro that I really like with these fluttering guitar and how it builds so well and it gets kind of noisy. And later in the track there's like this instrumental break that I enjoy a lot, but the track gets kind of ruined when the refrain or chorus comes in and it's just really redundant. Rest in pleasure. And then there's the track Ebony and Ivy, which I thought I was gonna like a lot at first, with these kind of rapid spoken word bits where I guess she's talking about what we're doing to the environment, and it seems all kind of Mono Roberts-ish. But then the instrumental comes in, and once again the instrumental just seems so Mitchell inspired, and I just can't really vibe with it that much, especially since I couldn't really get down with the other tracks that were doing the exact same thing. The fact that this vocal thing is like the only thing that really shines on this track. And the track No Nobles once again embraces a Joni Mitchell vibe. It's got this acoustic guitar intro, and after that the instrumental just gets really boring. That's the thing about this album in general. These instrumental compositions and performances aren't really shining through about 3/4 of the time, and that's unfortunate because this is a very talented individual in terms of vocals and bass. I can't say that the one thing that this album has going for it is the vocals on this album. Esperanza sounds really eccentric, she's capable. I love her vocals pretty much from front to back on this album, but everything else, it depends on what track you're on, and for the most part it's tracks that I don't really care that much for. Like on the track Farewell Dolly, I like the cerebral sounding bass, and she's singing over this stripped back instrumental, and that's pretty much it. That's all the track is. But fortunately, it's a brief track anyways. And then there's Elevate or Operate. This is probably the worst track on the album. It just sounds like a musical number of some kind. It's cheesy. It's just not that interesting at all. Then there's a track Funk the Fear. I like the instrumental. It's just that this like Funk the Fear refrain that goes on just comes off as corny instead of just aggressive or anything. I love the funk instrumental on this track. It's just that it's not really a highlight for me. I will say it's one of the better tracks in the album, but for me it's not that big of a highlight. And then the closing track, I Want It Now, just reminds me of one of the songs off of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and once again, a musical number that seems not that intriguing to me whatsoever. I mean, I like how it pretty much finishes the album off, and finishes the album off relatively briefly, but this doesn't save the album at all. So overall, I didn't care that much for this album. As a matter of fact, I disliked it. I didn't dislike it a whole lot, it's just that I just felt really disappointed with this album. I mean, I respect an artist trying to do something different. If you're into that, then maybe give this a try, but I can't say that it's something I'm interested in, really. For Esperanza Spalding to just try to do these compositions, try to make this transition into rock music, it just seems kind of asinine, or the way it's coming off as is. This album is a -0.8 out of +3. I didn't really like this album. I mean, the vocal performances are great. When the instrumental really shines through, it really does shine through particularly well, but for the most part, there's not much to report. It's Esperanza Spalding trying to do something different, and it doesn't go all that well. Not for me, anyway. But if you've given this album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you like this album? Did you dislike this album? What was your reasoning for that, and what should I consider listening to and reviewing next? This is CWD Music Reviews here, signing off.